One of the great surprises about the universe is that it got to life so quickly. I mean, for us, it seems like a long time. The universe is 13.7 billion years old, and life has only been around for 4 billion years. You know, it took 9 billion years or so, 10 billion years to get to life. That seems like a long time. But actually, if you look at the combination of molecules that were necessary to get to life, it's extremely unlikely. And if you just looked at a random combination of molecules, we wouldn't even be anywhere near amino acids at this point after 10 billion years. So one of the great shocks is that the universe got to life so quickly. And scientists then are beginning to imagine that the universe in some sense was going for life from the beginning. It sort of knew in some mysterious, unknown way how to get there. It had life sort of permeated itself even when it was just elementary particles. We don't know exactly how this happened. There are theories. But the main point here is that we're beginning to reflect on the fact that life is central to the universe, not an accidental stowaway passenger, but it's central. So I have this quotation from one of the really finest scientists of our time, Freeman Dyson, and he's trying to give a sense of this. He says, "It is conceivable that life may have a larger role to play than we have yet imagined. Life may succeed against all the odds in molding the universe to its own purposes. And the design of the inanimate universe may not be as detached from the potentialities of life and intelligence as scientists of the 20th century have tended to suppose." So this question of what's the larger meaning of the universe and of life relates to our discussion today on the cosmological power of transformation. So the universe had to transform itself over and over again to get to life. And so what is the nature of transformation? What is that power? And also, how can we participate in it? Transformation as a power relates very strongly to all the previous powers, but above all to the one we just discussed before in Power 7 of transmutation. I thought I'd just begin by just distinguishing the two. Transmutation is the power of change at the individual level that's demanded by the whole context. So life as a whole, or the society as a whole, makes a demand on an individual to change. Transformation is the reverse. Transformation is about the change worked into the whole context by the individual. Now, this question of transformation there's so many ways to approach it, and I wanted to begin thinking about it from the idea of space-time binding. It's a technical phrase that has to do with the way in which the universe folds back on itself. So it's as if different points in the universe are folded back into the present, and so you have more of the universe present at one time than previously. I'll give examples of this. The first great moment of space-time binding is when you move from the early plasma state to the time when the elementary particles become stable. So electrons and then protons actually hold and endure through time. So they, in a sense, represent a very early moment in the universe. That structure came forth and persisted through time. Protons are structures. They consist of 3 quarks. And they emerge and they hold that structure so that an early event in the universe then is present to us in the form of the structure it gave birth to. Even more powerfully is the emergence, a little bit later, 300,000 years later, of the first atoms. So atoms, too, couldn't exist in the first few 100,000 years of the universe, and then they came into existence. And then they go forward, and we're composed of these atoms of hydrogen, so that, in a real sense, this structure from the early universe is present here now. And the universe also will return to the early moments in an interesting way. In the center of stars, the temperature gets so hot that the atoms dissolve down, and we have the reoccurrence of the early universe and its dissolution of all structure. The center of a star is a way in which the birth of the universe is re-evoked. So a couple things are going on here. One is the way in which the universe gives birth to structure. And the other is the way in which the universe returns to the origin of structure in certain times and places. Then the last example I just wanted to give of structure in terms of space-time binding would be the galaxies as a whole. The galaxies, too, come into existence about 1 billion years after the birth of the universe. And then they hold. So the galaxies then are a gathering of these different moments of structuration. You have the elementary particles, and you have the atoms, and then you have their formation in the galactic structure. So these different eras then are held together as galaxies, and the galaxies then open the possibility for further development. You begin to get a sense of what it means to transform in the universe. Each of these is a transformation event. And they're leading to a time when more of the universe is present in one place so that further development might be possible. And we come then to a qualitative change in this sequence with the emergence of life. So the galaxies enable planets to come into existence. And planets then are holding all of these possibilities. And one of them is this amazing new quality, life. What is it about life that is different? With life, there is a way of holding the memory of an event. And the memory of the event then is used to structure matter in a way that brings back that memory. Example I've used before here is photosynthesis, an amazing event. This incredible event of photosynthesis takes place where these cells learn how to actually interact with the sun. That learning process is remembered in the genes, in the DNA. So life has this incredible way of folding an event into a molecular form and then enabling that structure to go forward in time so that that event can then be folded back out. It's amazing. I mean, if there hadn't been some way for this to take place, then photosynthesis would have been an incredible achievement by some individuals, and then it'd be over. But instead, now that event, a long process, now the whole event, that is now present here. That's the whole idea of space-time binding. There's more of the universe somehow folded into this moment. And because of that, there are these new possibilities. The first forms, talking about the way in which life invents a form of memory. This all took place with single cells. And their way of passing the memory on was from one cell to another, either to a cell that was created by the first cell, a daughter cell, so through replication, or to another prokaryote nearby, handed over, the information handed over. So you have this vertical transfer of information down these lineages. And then another incredible moment takes place with the invention of sexuality. See, with sexuality then you have two beings are fusing, and the memories that they carry are shuffled together in a new way. And so you have two beings give birth to a new cell, and these two came from two. So you have any particular cell branches out as you go back in time. If you can think of this now, we have the lineage, of course. So you have a cell, it has its parents, they have their parents. If you can think of this now as the way in which this ancestral tree ties together all of these different events and folds them all into this new being. So it's an amplification of the way in which life learned to carry memories forward. And it's a shuffling of events through the shuffling of genes so that new combinations can arise. So I just find it so magnificent, the way in which the universe is harvesting all of these fantastic moments and then bringing them all to bear in this one particular place. That's the whole idea of space-time binding. So if you can just picture this at this level, look at our solar system, for instance. It's what's present in the solar system. Well, in the center of our sun, what's present there is the same nature that gave birth to the universe, seamlessness. We're now at the place of even before there's atoms, so all structure is gone. It's that realm that gives birth to all structure. So we have the energy that's there, of course, is the energy from the beginning of time. That's true of the entire solar system. The energy that permeates the entire solar system is from the beginning of time. Now, the atoms of our Earth, for instance, they didn't come from our sun. They actually were created by distant stars that exploded in supernovas, so that those moments are all gathered together here as well. Then you look at the life systems. All the life systems carry within them all of these ancient events. And all of that, you see, is dancing here on the Earth and throughout the solar system. That's space-time binding. You begin to see what the universe is about. So here would be the philosophical interpretation. It's this. The universe is aiming to transform itself so that the universe as a whole can participate directly in the evocation of community. This then would be what Freeman Dyson is talking about, the way in which life is molding the universe. So just to say it again, the universe is attempting to become involved in a four-dimensional way at every place within the universe. This is my sort of philosophical interpretation of what I'm talking about. The universe wants to become involved in a four-dimensional way at every place in the universe so that it might more effectively activate communion, community, intimacy. And so I say it wants to become involved everywhere. Well, where we know it's become involved is with the planet Earth. We have all of this colossal interweaving that's taken place here that enables this moment to exist. And you see, that's the difference. That when I say to enable this moment to exist, that's the difference. We can no longer say, well, it just worked out well. It's lucky. It was an accidental. We can't do that anymore because it happened so quickly. And so we have to find some way to orient ourselves in the midst of this. The universe is aiming to get to a place of intense community. But it's a community that's of a four-dimensional. When I say four-dimensional, I mean not just the three dimensions of space, but also the dimension of time. It's the past is present here as well in the form of the structures of the atoms and in the processes of life. Now to move to the next level of more complex life and to see what happens here with, if we look at, say, the experience of a squirrel, a community of squirrels. They live on a mountainside in the lowlands, and then what happens is that for some reason or other, they move up the mountain, say several thousand feet over a period of time. What could happen? Well, the climate could change and get warmer, and then so things grow further up, and so suddenly the squirrels find themselves further up the mountain in a different situation. Now, when the squirrels go to a different scene, they experience stress on their bodies. So, for instance, if it's thinner air than what they were evolved for, they're going to be having to pant more, and so there's a way of trying to deal with a situation of stress like this. If it is one where it's too far out of their range, then of course they can't survive there. But what I want you to see is that for the typical squirrel that is born in the lowlands, the DNA have a value built in, so that the value has to do with the form of the air in which they evolved. So the little squirrel comes out expecting to find the situation kind of like, mom and dad found it and the grandparents and so forth back thousands of years. They expect to find that. And then you have like a bell curve. And so you have, here's the value that's set by the DNA for the most part. And then you have a little variance off that. And so, they do well right here. If they're in a situation far away from the value that's encoded in the DNA, they can't survive. Are we all together? So now, if you go up the hill, what's happened is you're moving off the value that is deeply embedded in the DNA. So you're over in a situation of stress, say over here near this end. So what takes place? It's so marvelous. Constantly coming out of seamlessness is the genetic mutations. And these then bring forth different forms of squirrels. And there's a whole bunch of possibilities flooding forth. And it's interesting, life puts these new genetic forms to the test. The first test is this. The baby squirrels have got to survive and do well in mom's body. So mom's body carries all of this ancestral memory. It's all there structuring. So all of that past is there in the form of mom's body. And the new squirrel then chemically, right, physiologically, has got to cohere with that system. If it's too far away from that system, life doesn't take a chance and just aborts the life. Because it's the value of life is so important, the integrity and the community of life is so important that it can't risk upsetting that too much. So there's the first test. It's within mom. But then there's a second test. The second test is when the baby squirrels then become part of the larger world. And then the world tests them. And the question then is, can these new squirrels find energy and reach sexual maturity and reproduce? So the whole world now is submitting them to this test. That's called fittedness. If these squirrels survive, they fit into the community. So life as a whole is demanding that the new squirrels cohere with the community. Now, the thing is, these new squirrels may have a genetic mutation that enable them to do better in this thin atmosphere than the other squirrels that did well in the lowlands. You see what happens then? Here's the evolution at work right now. Because of the genetic mutation and their ability to flower in this new situation, they have more offspring than the other types. And so that over time, their genetic mutation becomes the new value that's folded into the DNA. And so you have evolution taking place, where this value, right, is moved from here over to here, and you have either a new species or a new subspecies entering into existence. Because the value is changed at the genetic level. And what does it enable? It enables life to cohere. It enables life to enter into mutually enhancing relationships in this new area. So, it's a kind of learning that takes place. This is a transformation that's a kind of learning, but it leads to a form of vitality, and I would even say a form of peace You go from stress to fecundity. This would be the transformation taking place at the level of the mammalian world, and then to move to the human. Now we move to the human and ask the same kind of question. What's transformation about? And what's new about the human? And as we've said several times, what's new about the human is the invention of the symbol, language. And it gives enormous power to the human. And power of several types. The first one is this. It brings into the moment things that otherwise wouldn't be present. They're not physically there, but they're symbolically there. So language brings into our awareness so much that isn't physically there. But I want you to see this as a new form of space-time binding. So it's an enormous increase. Suddenly, like, so many things are just there, present in the mind. It enables an enormous wandering to take place. Because humans could get around some of the limitations that had constrained their ancestors, humans began to wander all over the planet. And then began to wander into different psychic states, spiritual states, civilizational states. Just wandered. We might start off with the squirrels moving up the mountainside. Well, it just explodes with the human. And as we know, some of this wandering turned out to be deleterious, so that there is the need for constraints on some of the places humans have wandered into. For instance, excessive consumerism. Now, we talked about that in transmutation. So, but all of this is related. Here, rather than talk about the constraints that have to be put on humans, I want to talk about the transformation that the humans are involved in. What exactly does it mean for the human to enter into the transformative power of the universe? That's the question. And the way I thought I would begin is to say this. Is to sort of take a person, imaginary person, and think about this person through the powers we've discussed so far. So I'm just going to sort of walk right through them. Now, these powers aren't linear. Like one doesn't necessarily lead to 2, lead to 3, lead to 4. All these powers are interrelated. But I'm going to walk through them as if they were kind of a linear process. So you have a person who enters into the world, and, wow, here he is. Make him a male. And we have this comes out of this long history, but suddenly is here. And then the universe enters into this first power of centration. And so this person then realizes in one way or another the universe is involved in his unfolding. And he has to find a way forward because here he is. And so, moving into the second power of allurement, finds there are different things that are captivating him, different things that are alluring him. And just in response to those, just develops a life of pursuing these various dreams or ideas. And the pursuit itself activates the third power of emergence. So the sensitivities of a person, the intelligence, relationships, all of these come forth out of this pursuit of one's vision or dream. And then, moving to the fourth power, homeostasis, this young person then finds his role in the society. So what holds it all together, homeostasis, what keeps it all going, finds some place to fit in to that whole ongoing process. But then encounters the fifth power, cataclysm. Things fall apart. It could be a marriage that collapses. It could be the job that just turns so horrible, it's miserable. It could be health concerns. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that one way or another, the cataclysm will relate to the fundamental cataclysm taking place on the planet today. And that is the end of the Cenozoic era. And that is the withering of the planet. One way or another, this, whatever cataclysm a person might meet, it's going to be related to the fact that we are in the most destructive moment in the last 65 million years of this planet. So, but what happens in the moment of cataclysm is a freedom from illusion, because now you're suddenly asking the ultimate questions. What you thought was real has collapsed. And so you need to know how to move forward. And in those moments there can be a glimmer of the ultimate essence of the universe, which is community and synergy. This would be the sixth power. There can be a realization that, what I'm really about is love. What I'm really about ultimately is helping. What I'm about some way is making a contribution, being part of something larger than some kind of selfish concern. So the cataclysm eliminates the illusions, and there's a sense of what really we're here for. And then one moves into the seventh power of transmutation, and one realizes, in order to really make a difference, I've got to change fundamentally. I've got to, use an old word, vomit out certain aspects that I regarded as myself. Unconsciously, I've become a consumer. I didn't really plan to be, but I just realized my whole life is organized around consumerism, for one sort or another. Or I have to somehow release myself from the extremes of militarism, just this endless warfare, or the extremes of competition. I realize my whole life has been based on competition, one way or another. So there's this unlearning that takes place, deep unlearning. This is where this whole point of a metanoia, right, or metamorphosis. This is in the power of transmutation. It's connecting to the origin of things, going all the way back to the beginning. What am I really about? And so then when one has a sense of actually a sense of a vision, a creative vision for moving forward, then one moves into this power of transformation. And then so you have a creative vision, and you have some worry, some anxiety that still, is this creative vision going to actually be helpful, or is it simply going to contribute to the pain of the world? And that's, again, the sense of transformation. But it's also this question of testing, so that one's vision has to be carefully examined and tested. This young person, I'm imagining, has a vision. His vision is, it could be anything, right? I just want to go through with one example to give you a sense of how this connects with the transformation taking place in the whole life world. So imagine a person had the vision of creating a TV food show, all right? That's the vision. So one wants to really move forward in the world and create a TV food show. Now, that could be a neutral idea. It could be a horrendous idea. It could be a helpful idea. It all depends. And this is where the process of testing takes place, like the squirrel inside mom's body. It's internal. Nothing's happened yet. You're just thinking about this idea. And so you have to know the field of TV. You have to know the genres that are out there, because you have to cohere with what's in the world today. If it doesn't cohere one way or another, no one's going to pay any attention, right? It's got to be recognizable. So there has to be a development of competence in terms of TV production. Then you actually want to be beneficial. So it must in some way or another advance these powers in the universe. So for instance, how would it advance centration? Well, a TV show can actually empower people, because it can free them from a dependency relationship on fast food joints, so that you're actually enabling people to take some responsibility for their lives. That's great. What about allurement? Does this relate to allurement? Well, this show would be pitched at young men, all right, in, say, their 20s and 30s. And part of the show would be, I'm making this up, part of the show would be how to woo women. So it'd be like, a way to really cook something that's fantastic and romantic, and you're going to be a hit. All right, you think of yourself as unable to get a really good date, just keep watching the show, and pretty soon you'll have the women flocking to your place because you're such a great romantic chef. Okay, then take one more, homeostasis. Now, what about homeostasis? Will this enable the whole society to function well? You're going to create a show that uses organic foods, grown locally, all right, so that rather than getting people, and you're going to help them find the foods, rather than having people depend upon the agribusiness and the way in which they're chewing up the planet, you're going to send them towards, endeavors that are really enhancing the world, all right, and so forth. So then, you have this great idea. Then you've got to go to the TV producers. And the TV producers have got to be convinced. This is all part of the internal testing. The TV producers have to be convinced that this idea is a winner. All right? So there has to be a way in which to get through that particular part of the cultural DNA. All right? That's what I call this. You think about it as cultural DNA. So that and you have to be exciting, you have to convince them this is going to work and so forth, and then they take a risk and they release the program out into the world. And now its success is going to depend on what? It's going to be dependent upon whether or not it's fascinating for the viewers. It's going to be, and if it's fascinating in one way or another, in other words, if it enhances their lives, they too enter into a kind of sexual process in that they talk about the show to others. And so the cultural way of sexual mating is through convincing other people that something is really worth paying attention to. It has to do with attention. And so then if other people begin to get excited about the show, you see what happens. Well, one thing that happens is that the local farmers sort of bring synergy in. The local farmers are kind of thrilled. Hey, our whole career here is enhanced by this show. So they began to send food to the producers for free. In other words, all the food you want, you got it from us. And then now the show's doing well, and what's the first thing that happens? Copycat shows. So there's lots of other shows begin to show up around this idea of ecological, local food. And so once there's copycat shows, the executives notice this, right? And they change their criteria. When they change their criteria, do you see what's taking place? The cultural DNA is taking place. In other words, watch what happens. They start off with a certain kind of value. They have a certain value as to what makes good television. Whatever that value might be, they have a way of expressing that. But if there is the appearance of this new form, something new shows up, if it's successful, the executives then alter their criteria. And so you have, think of this, the coding of the planet is changing. The cultural coding of the planet. Just like with the squirrel population, it's the DNA, the genetic coding changed. With the human, it's cultural coding. And once there are more shows like this, and then suddenly you have the people that are producing wind and solar energy, they get excited about this. They start to advertise on this because they want to be associated with this. And then people are finding out that they're not as sick anymore because of this organic food. So disease starts to drop down. You see how this would snowball. That's the power of coherence. Life is searching for a coherent community, one that explodes and synergizes back upon itself. And then pretty soon it becomes really embarrassing to be eating food that's actually grown by the agribusiness. It becomes kind of obvious, and so then that too begins to show up in our cultural coding. And then pretty soon you have this it becomes the most obvious thing on earth. Do we want to eat food that's locally grown, that actually enhances our bodies, and that actually synergizes local community? Do we want that? Or do we want to eat food that's based on the destruction of the planet and the bloodbath in the Middle East and the oil dependency and all the rest? I mean, It's not a hard decision, but it requires 10,000 different ways forward, each of them coherent with all the others, all within this new paradigm. And one way to talk about it is a new paradigm of these cosmological powers, because they enhance one another. One of the things to notice here is that, and it's an amazing thing, it's an amazing change that takes place with the human. An individual's experience can become the source for the recoding of the planet. And that's new. Just to review, I talked about at the beginning you have structures that show up, like atoms, and they endure through time. It's a way of the universe folding upon itself. But when they endure through time, the experience they have makes no difference. It's the same hydrogen atom. Who knows what adventures it's been in the past? Here it is. It's the hydrogen atom right now. And all those experiences are lost. Then you move to the amazing event of life, where suddenly events are remembered in the DNA. So you have individual squirrels say, this individual squirrel can learn all kinds of incredible things. But at its death, it all evaporates. It's the DNA that carries the learning forward. The DNA has to change. And then we come to the human, the unbelievable power of one person, and the experience of one person can then be folded into the cultural DNA because of this power of language. Individual person. So you see then suddenly how the universe has become more intense in its folding back upon itself. Way more intense. In the experience of one person, the cultural DNA can become recoded. And when the cultural DNA is recoded, all of the genetic DNA becomes recoded because of our presence around the planet. The fundamental question for every species is, can I interact successfully with the humans? So the way in which we organize ourselves is determining the genetic information of these other species. Recoding of the human is a recoding of the planet. So one way to think about our moment is that with the appearance of the human, we have the possibility for a transformation of the planet that is in a congruent relationship with the transformation that has taken place throughout time. In particular, we have before us the chance of bringing into the universe here, energy and information and ideas and learning that would otherwise not be present. It's one way to think about the major laws that we're proud of. For instance, the laws that ended slavery, or the laws that enabled women to vote, or the laws that are actually protecting animals and plants just because they should be protected. Now, in each of these cases, the earth is finding a way to bring into the community lineages that were previously blocked out. It is the fullness of the interaction that's made possible by these laws. The transformation is affected by the interaction of energies that otherwise wouldn't be here. So our Earth then consists of the life of the sun and the molecules that came from space and the complex molecules that were developed here. And just imagine all of these lineages of life. All of that experience is present right here. And with the human, the events that are even outside of our genetic lineages, like explosion of supernovas, all right, and the birth of galaxies, those events are present here as well, and more. What enters into this life of the planet is the unborn future. All of that becomes part of what is folded into this moment here. So one way to think about it is that what we have before us now is the transformation of the universe at the planet Earth that will enable the universe to fold together in a new way, so that a four-dimensional universe becomes present in the unfolding of this planet, including the far distant past and the far distant future, all of it throbbing with life here in the present now. This view of a planetary future, of an ecozoic future, this whole view would be one way to say what the universe is attempting to get to with our work now.